go. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining today. So for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Adam Reifsteck and I'm the founder of Teknofonic Recordings, which is a record label and artist development platform for electronic music producers. And we have Jeff James from Jeffrey James Art Consulting and founder of Forte Records. And we're talking today about effective ways to market and promote your music in 2020. So I was talking to Jeff about this when we were putting this presentation together of one of the biggest things I think misconceptions that musicians have, and I did for a number of years as starting off my career in music, is the difference between what PR is and what marketing it is and the role in that. So found this little nice little image just through Google searching that I wanted to share before we dive in. So Jeff is kind of the resident expert on all things PR, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit later after turning over to Jeff to talk about the PR stuff, to talk more about the marketing. And when you put the two concepts together, that's when you start seeing really good. Great results. And so with PR is focusing more on that brand awareness. So what is you as the musician, like how, reaching out to the public and media, community of influencers and promoting, just with the whole intention of like getting people to notice who you are. The role of actual marketing is actually where you actually businesses sell, how you actually sell stuff, and you actually make approaches. There's different strategies where you target run marketing campaigns based on demographics, like what is the audience that you're trying to reach, like what is their gender, what is their income, their age, and their behavior, what are they most interested in. And then the thing is with the main difference between marketing and PR is that with marketing, it's measurable results. So we talk about what is a return on investment. So how much advertising dollars are you putting in and what are you getting back in return? So as a label owner, I spend most of my time on marketing as opposed to PR, because artist managers and publicists are more focused on the PR side of things, the brand awareness for the artist. My role is to sell records, right? So that's where my expertise is. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. We're going to dive in. He's going to share some practical ways to get yourself out there and get people to start noticing you, and strategies that he's used with some of his clients. So yeah.
Thank you, Adam. I would really suggest that you get a piece of paper and a pencil or a magic marker or a crayon or whatever you write with. I tend to give out a lot of sort of practical information that and names of specific outlets and things that you can use. One of the distinctions that I think about when I think of the difference between marketing and PR is that it comes down to language, at least to me. Marketing is all about saying how wonderful you are. And PR is all about letting people know that you're doing something. I see, I don't know how many press releases, or I have seen, I don't know how many press releases over the years, that have right in the first paragraph words like wonderful, fantastic, amazing, and my personal favorite, not to be missed. And in many cases, or in most cases, you don't want to use those in a press release because editors don't care if you're wonderful or fantastic. They just care that something's happening on a particular day, at a particular time, in a particular place. Let's take a look at at a sample press release.
So let's see.
Okay.
Can you see this?
Yeah, it just happens. This is happening this evening. An Argentinian pianist that I work with is doing an online watch party on YouTube. This format, by the way, was given to me by the woman who was the listings editor for the New York Times for many, many years. And this is something that I didn't do for a long time, but she said, how come we don't have the what, when, where, and URL right up front so that people know right away what's happening, when, and where. I mean, in this case, it's online, so it's got that it's got the address of where the broadcast will be from. But of course, you would put a standard street address on in there if you were doing a live event. But this is a good format. Your basic information in the first paragraph, and some crediting information, repertoire, a little bit about the artist, and for more information, and then just the standard 4 lines up top, the date that you sent it out, when you want it available for release, and contact information. I always put contact information at the top and the bottom so that they don't have any excuse of saying that they don't know who to contact if they have more questions. So, and by the way, if anybody does have any questions or anything else to say about any of these things, please just jump right in. But this is a good format. I've used it for years, and it gets a fair amount of attention. Now, who do you send it to? Let's go to that Carnegie Hall item. This just showed up recently. One of the groups I work with was doing something with Carnegie Hall, and they very obligingly sent this over. It's a very basic list, but it's a really good core list of people to reach with your information. So you can see you've got magazines, you've got musicalamerica.com. That's a good site to be part of. You should register there because you can post your press releases right on their site. You have control of it. You can manipulate it in whatever way you want to. And that's
Jeffrey, don't they charge you to be a member of Musical America? You have to subscribe to it.
You can, but I haven't subscribed for years, and yet I'm still posting to them.
Had you been a one-time subscriber?
For actually, I was an advertiser.
Yeah, but that's why you can still do it.
Well,
if you've never subscribed or advertised with them, they have very rare windows of opportunity where they'll let you actually post if you're not there, unless they've changed in the last couple of years. I haven't done anything with them in the last couple of years.
I would take a look at that. I think that they open that up to a lot more people than just advertisers.
Okay.
I think they want to be a source of information for everything happening in the music world, mostly the classical music world. And so that's one thing. And then you've got New Yorker, and it's just so many other good sources there.
Jeffrey?
Yeah.
You seem to be describing this from the perspective of individuals doing this for themselves, as opposed to hiring a PR firm or a marketing firm.
Well, I think that's why we're having this discussion.
Okay.
PR and marketing people can be pretty bloody expensive. And I know some of them can be up to as much as $1,500 a month.
More than that. I've hired Don Lukoff, Ann Braithwaite, and Jim Igo, and personally Ann's my favorite, but there's something that there's a reason for hiring them sometimes.
Yeah, there's no question.
If you're a jazz artist and you want to get reviews, you basically either have to be a known artist or hire a master like Billy to be a sideman on your record, or hire a PR firm that they know, so when the thing shows up, they actually check it out. And that's one of the advantages of hiring a PR firm. If you hire somebody that's known, like if they get a Ken Hatfield record and Braithwaite and Katz submitted it, Downbeat's going to look at it, not because of me, but because they don't want to alienate Ann Braithwaite, because when Keith Jarrett's next record comes out, or Wynton Marsalis's next record comes out and she's the PR firm, if they ignored me, she might not send it to them.
Well,
That's the jazz world. That's very real. Talk to any jazz artists that are self-releasing artists or that work with indie labels that release stuff. If you don't do that, you run the risk of them simply. They got three piles that they put stuff in. Got to listen to it. Got to listen to this one. Might listen to it, or under no circumstances am I going to listen to it. And the best you can hope for if you're an unknown artist is to get into that second category. You hope
but
first.
I will say. Yeah, I will say that, well, two quick things. We'll send these, we're going to show some resources here today, and we'll be sending them out as well. So I guess, so Rob has all the emails, and we'll send out all these resources after. But secondly, I think what the point of this discussion is, like, you know, if you don't have, you can certainly do the PR route. I did. I spent a lot of money on PR stuff, and quite frankly, it didn't do jack shit for me, excuse my language.
Yeah,
But so if you don't have the money to do it, you know, Jeff is sharing ways that, you know, you can do it yourself. So
yeah, I think that's the idea. I work with a lot of individual artists and not-for-profit groups, and the not-for-profits certainly don't have that kind of money. They couldn't begin to think of hiring somebody like that. I mean, but that's really sort of another discussion. But so if it's okay.
Well, realistically, but the thing of it is that if you've got a business, those are business expenses. They're tax deductible, so they come off your bottom line at the end of the year. So it just depends on what
if you've got the money up front.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
If you've got the money up front, not everybody has the money up front.
Right, but
the
then
classical. I work mostly in the classical music world. The classical music world really does work differently than the jazz.
Okay.
And the list of people that you're seeing in the, on this this piece of the New York Times, that's the classical music world.
Right.
When
they're inundated with email press releases, how do you end up not going into their spam folder and they actually check out what's being said and maybe either come to the performance? I mean, to me, there's a big difference between what you got to do for a live performance and what you want to do to market or promote a recording.
Well, I'm talking about marketing or not marketing. I'm talking about getting the word out about live performances.
Right. Okay.
And marketing a CD or recordings that's a different thing. This is just selling your performance events either live or online or whatever type of thing you're doing. Okay, I'm sorry, kind of threw me there a little bit. So I guess the next thing then is let's talk about some of the online calendars. Now again, this is a way to keep more track of or to control what of your information is getting out there. I've got about 30 or so online calendars. Now, this is a little bit different than sending a press release. And by the way, the press releases, for anyone that's interested, I have, as I say, a list of about 250 emails of contacts throughout the New York Tri-State area. And anyone that would like to have that, I would be glad to send it over to them. So just send an email and I will, I'll send that out to you. Okay, it's not, I mean, it's just public information. There's no reason to treat it like it's proprietary or something, because it's certainly not. Anyway, the idea of posting things on online calendars. As I say, I've got about 30 of them. There's only a few of them that are specific to the classical music world. I would say most of them are pretty general and are good places to get information. Again, you have to do the posting in some cases, but in many cases you send them the press release and they will get things on there. So let's start with New York events. Then there's Eventbrite, There's one called Pulsed, P-U-L-S-D. Then Metro Focus. Metro Focus is a program on Channel 13. And you can send a story pitch to them. Just looking down my list here. Who Fish, Classical Light, all events. Actually, I don't know, I'm wondering if maybe I shouldn't just, again, make this list available after the fact. I think it would probably be better to have the links over to these sites, as I could read off 25 more names, but you wouldn't have the links to their sites, and that wouldn't be terribly helpful. So I'll make that available to anyone that would like to have it. Just a few to point out that are very helpful, because they create pages, or actually you create a page on their site, which you can then use on social media or any other places you want to. BroadwayWorld.com is a very good site where you give them the information, they create a page all about your event. And it's done in a very nice format, and it's eminently usable. That one I've used just about every time I do an event. There's also All Events. That's a very good one. Again, they're easy to create these pages, and they're very usable online. I'm looking at this list and I'm realizing that because of this pandemic business, several of these people have gone out of business. Manhattan Users Guide, or MUG as they call themselves, they were a terrific site, but they went out of business just a few weeks ago. Then Lucid Culture is another good one. Classical Light. So again, rather than just go through this list, I'll make that available to anyone that.
Jeff, just real quick, since you raised the topic of the pandemic, in terms of what you're discussing right now, is there any 25 word or less addition you can make regarding doing this kind of work under those conditions? Any words to the wise, so to speak?
In what sense?
In the sense of we're now living in an altered universe, and we're still trying to have a path forward as musicians.
Oh, yeah.
In this case, you're talking about PR, and it's still a valid thing, and people still want to be seen, and there's still an internet. So,
well, a lot of the PR I'm doing these days is for online events.
Well, absolutely.
And now I think what happened was, when this started, people were doing their online events, and they really felt that they couldn't charge for attendance at these events. But now that we're getting into what would have been the concert season, there's a lot more people going for $10, $20, $30 admission charges to their events. I think you're seeing that with a lot of the jazz clubs. Right? Isn't Blue Note doing a regular series of online events where they're charging admission? I know that Spike Wilner's been doing a whole bunch of those kind of things. I don't think he's charging, or actually, no, he has a membership. He has a membership structure.
You're talking about at Mesro and Smalls?
Yeah.
Smalls would be a likely candidate.
Yeah.
He's doing some at Mesro too.
Yeah, but he's been doing them online for a while. But now I think he's getting more into the charging for events, or as I say, asking people to take memberships.
This might seem a little off topic, but it's related, particularly in the classical world. So much of the repertoire is public domain, so it's not an issue. But I'm sure everybody noticed that last week Facebook, put out a thing that they're no longer going to let people, post music on the Facebook Live platform.
That's not entirely true.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
it,
well,
it,
whatever it is, the issue
yeah,
that a lot of people have come up against when you're playing like jazz, where you play standards that are still under copyright, is who's going to pay the mechanical license
mm,
for the rights.
yeah,
As of January 2021, under the mechanical licensing part of the Music Modernization Act, the platforms are supposed to have blanket licenses, which basically makes them the ipso facto broadcasters, and they're the ones that have to pay those licenses. Right now, there's a bunch of them trying to get the artists to pay them. So you're asking somebody to play and then set up a tip jar online, and then you're going to come back afterwards and tell the artist, oh, you just played a whole bunch of tunes by Gershwin and Cole Porter and the Beatles, you owe us X amount of money.
and that's what Facebook is getting at there, is
Yeah,
that they're
I know.
not going to pay for the license, so they'll mute you if somebody
Right.
claims it. And
But
they've
the
been,
point is, as
yeah,
of January 1st, 2021, they have to pay for the license or they can't put any music up. They have to
Actually,
buy a blanket license.
a week ago Sunday, one of my groups did a online event, and there was a couple of copyright issues, but nothing was blocked.
Right.
So,
Well, I mean, they're fighting back and forth with it.
and the classical music that I mostly work in is contemporary classical music.
Okay.
There's very, very little standard repertoire because I've got I work with all sorts of composers and
Are the composers performing their own material?
no,
Okay.
no, in many cases, no.
Because I did one of the ones that the union sponsored under the mayor's office for hospital workers, where I played like a solo guitar concert for an hour. And the way they got around it was that you couldn't archive it and you couldn't share it. It was like a live event, and once it was over, you had to delete it or save it, but never post it. That was the way they got around it.
yeah, and for purposes of this conversation, I'd like to steer it back. I mean, we could have a whole other webinar on this, but so for all intents and purposes, if we can focus more on just PR and marketing today.
Yeah. My standard answer when anybody asks, should we do this or this or this, I just say all of the above. And I think that one of the things that sort of marries marketing in with public relations is when you use all of these things, when you use a press release. And by the way, just one quick thing about press releases. When I send them out within the body of an email. And all of the email addresses are BCC. Back in the wonderful days of 9/11, there was a tremendous change in the business when somebody sent a packet of white powder to, I think it was the New Yorker.
Right. You've forgotten 9/11.
All right? And all of a sudden, nobody wanted to get press releases in the mail anymore. Everything had to come by way of email. And then a couple of times I made the mistake of not sending things BCC. And again, I think related to 9/11 and people's attitude toward the world at that point, there was a little bit of back and forth about, how could you give out my email address so that other people can see it? So it's just easier to send things as a BCC and the press release within the body of an email. It's also easier for people to, at the other end, to copy out.
Jeff, do you find that still to be the case now? Because I've had people, that I wanted to get stuff to that, I mean, granted they knew who I was, but they basically said if I emailed it to them, they'd never find it because they were inundated with like 3,000 emails a day. And they probably got 3 or 4 packages in the mail a day. So if I actually wanted them to look at it, I should mail it to them snail mail. So I've really seriously heard, high-placed people.
That's very jazz. That's very jazz world, I think.
Okay.
If you're talking about CDs and that kind of thing, certainly you still send.
I'm talking about
send copies that way.
I'm talking about photos and even press releases. I mean, I usually do both.
I haven't found that at all. Photos, they want the 300 DPI, and if they want it attached,
that's after you've established contact with them. I'm talking about the initial, when you're first trying to get them to pay attention to you.
Well, look, maybe it's because I've been doing this now for just about 30 years, and because I've got a good network of contacts in the classical music world and people that know that what I send is reputable. That's not been an issue.
Right. Well, I mean, if you're established and they know who you are, they're going to check it out because it came from you. They know you, not because they know the artist. And what I'm trying to clarify is, okay, if you're not going to hire a PR firm, or we're not going to hire you, we're going to do it ourselves. How do you get through that firewall of, hey, I just got 3,000 emails today and my spam filter is going to get rid of everything from anybody I've never actually dealt with before. It's not even going to let it through.
Look, I think with all firewalls, there's an element of luck in life, and there's no formula that if you mail a package, you'll get through, and if you send an email, you won't. You basically just have to hope you get lucky. Include a dirty picture with the email or something.
That is, luck, there's no question, luck is part of it, but I think, at least for me, one thing that I find gets attention is good programming, especially since I work in the new music world. There's certain types of programming that are just more attractive to writers and to editors than other things. I mean, certainly if I was to send something saying that somebody's doing an all Brahms program, that's not going to get nearly as much attention as a program of music by American women or something like that. And I guess part of it is how you write the press release. But it's also, as Roger says, there's no question, there's a certain amount of luck. I sent something out just sort of blindly a few weeks ago for the lady that's doing the online event this evening, and I get an email from New York Latin Culture saying we'd like to pick this up. Not only did they pick it up, but they wrote a tremendous article about her, and so there's a certain amount of that. But a lot of it is just establishing these relationships with the editors through repeated quality product that you send them, and they know that what you're sending is verifiable and reliable and easy to use. So I think that all of that counts. One other
great certification for contemporary music, the easy to use sticker. As opposed to the parental advisory. Anyway.
One other platform that I use is Constant Contact. It's an online newsletter service. There's Constant Contact, there's MailChimp, there's Vertical Response, there's a whole bunch of these out there. For me, Constant Contact is the easiest to work with. They have a very nice, simple, attractive, colorful format. And you store emails that you want to regularly send things to within their system, and it's a pay system. It's not terribly expensive. It can be if you run up, like me, 25,000 emails in the system. But I've got those in all sorts of different categories. I've got one of maybe 400 or 500 orchestra emails. Another 150 piano trio, another 100 and something European ballet company emails, all of that kind of thing. So that can add up to a bit. But if you're just doing a personal email list of maybe a few hundred, and so it really doesn't have to be expensive, and it's very easy to work with. As I say, it's colorful, it gets attention, and you'll get, if you do these things right, you can get a decent return on them. And it's another way to sell your events. It's a little bit more in the marketing realm, because you can use language like wonderful, beautiful, fantastic, not to be missed. But that's because you're doing it on a more personal level rather than on a professional level.
Jeff, this several times you've brought up this idea of not using phrases like that in the beginning, and I understand what you're saying and understand why. But what if you're quoting, like, famous critics that have said those things about you to get people's attention when they may not have heard of you?
You can take a look at the press release that I had sent Adam. There is a section down below for biographical information. That's where you can put that kind of thing.
Right. No,
It's
I mean,
That's just not the kind of thing you would put right up front.
Right now, I've written dozens of press releases and for my own projects, but I always run them by the PR firms I hire first, and then they fine tune it. And through the years, I've learned where to use it. I'm asking that more as a information thing for other people, because if you're fortunate enough to have gotten awards or have great reviews, and you're reaching out to somebody who doesn't know who you are, and you don't have a PR firm that they recognize, I just know how I react when I get like emails from people that I don't know. It's like, oh God, I got to deal with this now, and how you overcome that. I mean, I can understand, you don't want to put all that stuff up front, but like they say, sometimes if you don't blow your own horn, there ain't no music.
Well, I'll tell you what worked for me in reaching out, do-it-yourself approach, because I had a bad experience with a PR firm that did nothing for me. So I decided to go my own route and do it myself. And what actually worked for me was not making it about me at all. Making it about who I was sending it to, talk about what they just recently covered, and then, do it 100% about them. And then at the end, I say, oh, by the way, this is, a tune that's similar to what you just covered. It'd be great if you check it out. And then I'll follow up with them again. So, and then also another approach that I found worked really well is I'll actually interact with these people on social media. Like, respond to their posts, comment on stuff. So I mean, you just kind of have to take if don't have like the accolades, or you're doing it yourself, like I did, that really worked for me until you start building up the networks, such as Jeff has said. He's build up a rapport with all these people, and every publicist has done that too. So you're kind of like taking on the role of the publicist yourself.
Well, so, I've had really disastrous results with one PR firm that's very famous, but I had unbelievable results with another one. In fact, we came up with a strategy similar to what you're describing. I was releasing books of original classical guitar compositions, one book of 24 preludes, a couple years later, another book of 24 etudes, and then a couple years later, a book of 12 preludes. And they came with a CD. And what we did was put together a database of every classical guitar society on the planet Earth. Then the PR firm, who had the big reputation, sent out a mass email, kind of like what Jeff's talking about, to ask the people that ran these classical guitar societies if they were interested, and we'd send them a free copy. And when we sent them a free copy, they then reviewed it in their own newsletter, and I sold tons of books because it was targeted in that way, because knowing that they were a classical guitar society, if they reviewed it in their newsletter, then their membership would pay attention. But the rest of the stuff is like, basically, if you don't have the money to run ads in some of these magazines, you're not going to get reviews.
Isn't that the way Downbeat works?
Downbeat doesn't work that way. At least they swear they don't. All the rest of them will come right out and tell you that, like Jazz Times and Jazz is, if you don't buy an ad, you're not going to get a review. Downbeat says they don't do that. But it's been my experience, when I ran ads in there, I got reviews. When I didn't, I didn't.
Yeah, I've had that.
They don't say that they do. The other ones will come right out and tell you that's what they're doing. Jazz Improv, anybody remembers that one? I mean, he used to send out advice to people, telling you to run an ad. And why do you want to run an ad for your gig? To make your competition jealous. I mean, he would actually say things like that in his sales pitch to get us to buy ads in his magazine.
Well, there is, I don't know if you're familiar with Fanfare. It's a classical music.
Yeah, he does the same thing. He's been after me for years to buy ads and buy reviews in his publication.
Yeah, you have to buy at least one full-page ad or 2 half-page ads. And for that, he will do, in some cases, multiple reviews of a CD, or reviews of a previously unreviewed CD. But he'll also publish, he'll do an interview. He'll have one of his writers do an interview.
I know, what's his name? I can't even remember, but I guess
Flegler.
Yeah, exactly. I still get emails from him, even though every time I've told him no.
Yeah, no, he's persistent, and the fact that it's working is the fact that his magazine is now running at like 800 pages an issue, and a couple of the other magazines that don't solicit advertising are getting thinner and thinner. So, what can you say about that? But anyway, so what else were we going to talk about? Anybody have any questions about any of this?
I just, based on other conversations we've had in the past, pre-pandemic, the sense I had from talking to you was that in the classical music world, size was starting to matter in the inverse sense, meaning that smaller ensembles were becoming increasingly competitive or viable relative to large ensembles, I guess kind of because of funding and computers and other good things like that. Any
Right.
words to the wise there?
Actually, that's an issue. That was one thing that New York State Council on the Arts and New York City Department of Cultural Affairs and a number of other people were very quick to jump on when this started back in March. It wasn't too long after that that they all made clear that whatever funding you had gotten from them could be applied to online events and to things outside the concert. So that's been enormously helpful for a lot of the groups that I've.
So that's sort of a don't give up hope, but and keep applying for grants kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
Keep applying for grants, but also use the money that we've already given you for online events. And now many of them want to know what online events you're doing. So it's good that they're starting to require that, because I think there was.
And in the old days, you could argue infrastructure costs plus salaries.
Yeah.
So you have to devise some novel accounting to justify whatever you're crediting to whatever events online, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they want you to be very upfront about that now. So.
I have one question, Jeff, just in terms of like some maybe clarification or guidelines. I realize the classical world is different, but I'm assuming that not everybody involved here is involved in classical music. I mean,
and I realize that,
I'm peripherally involved in, but when you're, one of the real problems if you're like an entrepreneur and you run your own label and you compose and then record your own material is, to get real players and people involved in all that stuff. If you're playing acoustic instruments together in the same place at the same time, you're going to be investing a fair amount of money in it. And the infrastructure for airplay and the infrastructure for reviews, they still require you to submit CDs. They won't accept, direct digital submissions.
There's a few that will, but not very many.
Not in the jazz world, there are.
No, and not in the jazz world. In the classical world, as a matter of fact, Fanfare Magazine will take digital download. Okay,
so what I'm trying to get at is if you're going to do a digital submission, how do you monetize that submission to get the investment of capital that was required to document the music? How do you recoup your investment? Because it's not like, I mean, the remuneration rates for streaming, it's like, less than 10 thousandths of a cent, and you got to be the composer, the featured artist, the publisher, and own the record label to even get that in places like YouTube. So the remuneration rates are so damn low that, and then you're being forced to manufacture an obsolete item, a CD, to submit for review. They won't accept them if you submit it any other way. And BGO and places like that won't accept it for play either. So what I'm trying to get at is, how do you differentiate marketing for a gig from marketing for a recording when you got to deal with those real world obstacles? Because at every stage of the game, somebody's standing there with their hand out and you're supposed to pay for something that you can't monetize.
Well, I have to tell you, to be perfectly honest, in the classical music world, nobody is expecting to get those costs back.
Right.
And a lot of my clients are, and I'm sure this has to do with the fact that they don't care about that kind of thing. A lot of my clients are tenured university people, and they just don't need the rather thin income from sales. Adam, do you?
Yeah, I guess that maybe is a good segue into my topic, since we are, getting, it's 10 till 5 at the moment. But so So that's the thing. I think the distinction is you think if you're going to get a big review or get all this publicity and stuff, that's going to sell records. And in my experience as a label owner, it doesn't. And that's the reason is because they're two different things. And going back to that, the difference between marketing and PR is super important to build that brand awareness, so people know who you are, so that when they do see you selling an album or something like that, then they're more likely to take that next step. And it all starts with whenever you approach something, whether it's PR or more importantly in marketing, and what I do is you have to start with a strategy, like an overarching strategy. So I'll make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. Share. There we go. So basically there's this concept in marketing, this is from Starbucks to McDonald's or Amazon, you name it, they all have what they call a customer journey. And so what I like to call it the fan value journey. And there's actually, you have to strategically take somebody from a casual listener, or somebody that has no idea who you are, to a super fan or something.
Is that the lower left-hand corner? Aware? Is that the beginning?
So that the where is that's the beginning stage. So basically how this works is you're trying to get a potential fan is going to discover you online, and this is where that PR stuff comes in. They're going to hear you from a friend, or they're going to see you at a gig, or it's not so much these days with COVID, but if they see you online, live streaming or something like that. So this is all the first step of your customer journey. So you really have to map this out. Where are you going to take, if you really want to sell music, you actually have to treat yourself as a business and map out what is your customer journey. So how are they going to go from the casual listener to the somebody that's going to be buying your stuff. So then the next step is engage. So this is where the potential fan's going to, read about you, or they're going to engage with you, start liking, start commenting on your posts on social media. They're watching your video. And then it's going to lead to the next step, which is subscribe. And this is where you get people to opt in to receive gated content, whether that's, the goal is to start building your email list, to get people in to opt in to receive, whether it's going to be a free download, or in the case of if you're selling, lessons or an instruction book or something like that, just like maybe one lesson or something like that for free. The point is to get them to subscribe. And then after they're on your email list, then you can start sending them follow-up emails. You can accelerate it through retargeting with Facebook ads, but we can talk about that a little later.
That's also where you can, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's also where you can use something like a constant contact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I use MailChimp. It's free for up to 2,000 subscribers, I think. So that's a good starting point if you're looking for a low cost thing. So with these automated emails, or like sending out emails to your email list, you want to get them to make a small purchase, because this is going to get them to make a commitment. And this isn't very big. You're not asking them to, buy, a vinyl or buy 10 of your records or something like that. They're going to make some sort of small purchase. And then they actually start to enjoy your music and start to, follow you and sort of engage with you more on a level. And then that's where you can start pitching them, whatever your core offer is, like whether it's that CD, the CD, full album, a vinyl record, and then the upsells are, where they ascend and give you more money, which is their, if you're selling merch, t-shirts, other stuff like that. And then it gets to the point where they advocate and or become an advocate, and they either review, they'd start you know, giving you a review on like iTunes or something like that. And then they'll go, the final step is promote, where the fan tells your friend about your music. So the way these arrows are kind of, you know, going back and forth is because as people are on this customer journey, you really have to engage with them in all these touch points and kind of really direct them, so to speak, on this journey. And you're, you know, if they go excite, you know, then you kind of want to retarget them and, you know, with more free content so that they're constantly engaging with you. Like, say, for example, you know, you go say, I'm going to go live on Facebook, send it out an email to your subscribers and say, I'm going to go live on Facebook, come join me, come hang with me, and you're going to play one of your tunes. And then that's where you have, you know, the virtual chip jar and do all that kind of stuff. So, you know, the problem that I see a lot of the artists that I work with is that they focus so much on the awareness, and they immediately think people should buy from you just because you have a review, just because, you know, somebody sees you on social media, then, you know, they're supposed to buy from you. Well, it doesn't work that way. And there's a reason why you go into McDonald's and they ask you, would you like fries with that? That's your upsell. So it's the same concept that you kind of have to treat your music. And so yeah, so I think the mistake is that, you know, I think if you think about it this way, I like to use this analogy. You wouldn't ask somebody you met for the first time to marry you, right? It would be really weird. So essentially, it's kind of, you're saying the same thing for a total stranger to buy from you. It's like you haven't earned the right for them, you know, to ask them to buy from you. So this is another way of thinking this. If you Google permission-based marketing, this is basically you're building up a rapport with a potential audience, and then at that to get them to ask, you know, basically you're giving them they're giving you consent to sell to them. So you can do this in such a way that is not salesy or pushy or like the used cars salesman thing. And I think it's super effective. And going in a little bit more detail here, this is that awareness, like with the social media post. I did this with one of the artists on my label. You know, we did a social media post here, as you can see, for their new release, just building that awareness so people are aware with this. So they're an LGBTQ, you know, band, or they're, you know, sensitive to that group. So we were, you know, you know, LGBT rights. So, you know, they featured this particular well-known artist in the UK that is one of the staples of that culture in London. So that kind of worked really well in terms of their audience. You can see a whole bunch of engagements and views on the video. And then this is an example of engagement. So I was going back to, you have to respond to your fans that are, it seems kind of obvious, but I see a lot of artists making this mistake, is that if people are commenting on your posts and stuff on social media, you have to reply to them. Or if you can't do it yourself, hire somebody to do it, because that's how you're going to build rapport with your audience. You'll see this big artist that I follow, Laid Back Luke, in my electronic world. He's a DJ. He's huge, but he still takes the time, whether it's him. But I actually met him once, so he is actually responding to all his fans. So I actually asked him about it. So he's responding to his fans there. And then this goes, you know, the subscribe thing. So where do people go when they see you after, you know, usually it's, you know, people are focused on sending people to Spotify. In all honesty, I think, you know, the artists that I work with, that's the wrong strategy, because we send all the potential fans back to the website where they can opt in to receive that gated content. Because what happens is we get their email list. So when they do release it on Spotify, we can send it out to the email list, and we can send all the people, you know, to listen to it on the release day. Because with Spotify, if you get more plays on release day, you know, it's going to, you know, it's going to get boost in the algorithm. You're going to get more, you know, more plays that way. And then after people are starting to engage with you and, you know, get to know you, then that's where you convert, where they can come. If you're selling your stuff on Bandcamp, you know, that's a really good way to do that these days. And you can even use some of their strategies to your advantage. Like during the pandemic, they've been, I don't know if you guys noticed, they've been doing, you know, where 100% goes back to the artist. So you can tell your fans that, you know, support me.
Tuesday or
and
Friday
so
was it?
Yeah, with the Friday releases.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so then going on to that is then you start building excitement with your fans. Like example here, LCD Sound System giving early access. This was before the screenshots from before the pandemic, but last year, where they were giving out, you know, discounts for the shows, you know, for the live shows. So you're rewarding your fans with you know, discounts and stuff like that. And then going on to the Ascend, this is again where you're, you know, offering merch. You know, people love, you know, the physical aspect, because we're now in the digital age and you're missing, you know, you're missing the physical aspects. So I think people are still buying CDs, and the reason, not the average listener isn't, you know, somebody that doesn't really know you isn't going to necessarily buy your CD. The people that are going to buy your CDs are the people that know you, or that you've kind of led to this step. So that's where you know, people buy your merch and your vinyl releases or CDs even. And then that's, you know, again, it's a ladder, because going back to that McDonald's thing, would you like fries with that? You want to upsize that. So you know, once they're going to buy a hamburger, you know, then you're going to, you know, say, oh, do you want the fries? And then do you want the soft drink on top of that? So that you kind of have to treat your music in the same respect. And then, you know, and then you get people to start reviewing you, user reviews on, you know, various platforms. This is just an example from iTunes. And then you can actually get people to start promoting you, like your fans. You can get your fans to promote you. We're all familiar with the street team back in the day, where you had, you know, especially in the rock culture, where you had people handing out pamphlets and flyers and stuff like that to get people to go to shows and stuff. So you can kind of create your own digital street team, so to speak, and have people repost your posts and stuff like that. And that gets more people into this, into your customer journey. So I just wanted to maybe throw in this for the producers that are since we have the Manhattan Producers Alliance here. I wanted to throw in this approach as a producer, as main stuff that I do now is mastering. And, you know, we all know, like, the age-old strategy of getting out there and networking, going to conferences, and I'm a member of the Audio Engineer Society. And, you know, I was, you know, when I first moved to New York, you know, I was doing all these things, but it really wasn't getting me work. And I thought, you know, so, you know, I couldn't, you know, I was trying to pull my network, trying to get gigs and stuff, and it just didn't really work with me. You know, I feel like I knew the right industry people, but it wasn't, you know, wasn't really getting me any work. So what I did about 5-6 years ago, when I started my record label and I was, you know, starting to do the mastering and stuff for my artist, I realized, you know, well, this is something I can monetize. This is a skill set. Like, I'm mastering tracks for the artists on my label. So why don't I offer this as a service? You know, and I could have gone the old route, like calling up all the people I know and said, hey, you know, I'm offering mastering services. Do you have any work? You know, so rather than doing that, I decided to do this as a test for myself, to see if I could engineer this do-it-yourself approach. So what I did is took the same customer journey, you know, mapped this out for how was I going to get clients. And that was through, you know, building that awareness, the social media ads. I was doing video tutorials. I've since, you know, deleted all that content from my YouTube channel since I'm focused on other things now. Since I'm not doing, you know, that as much these days, I'm focused more on the artist coaching and, you know, focusing more on the label these days. So, but when I was initially building up my client base, you know, I did this through YouTube tutorials, sharing articles on my social media about production. And then I got people to engage with my social media. And then I got them to, you know, get into like a free cheat sheet. So I was offering like seven steps for, you know, improving your mixes or something like that. Or, you know, so they were downloading, you know, a free cheat sheet to get on my email list. And then what I did is to get them to make that small commitment. You want to get them to, this is where that a conversion happens, where you get a client to make that small purchase. And it's not like they're going to buy my whole service of mastering, you know, mastering one of their tracks, because I was charging $100 to master your track. So somebody that just doesn't know me isn't going to do that. So what could I offer that would make that conversion happen, where they become a customer? Because somebody that has bought something from you is more likely to give you, you know, buy more from you. So, so what I was doing track reviews. So they would send in like for $1, you know, the point is it's very low cost. So like $1 to $7. The point is to get them to become a customer. And so I said I could do track reviews for $1. So they'd send me $1, and I would review their track, and I'd go above and beyond, give them detailed mix feedback, and then they actually got value from that. And then that was at that point said, hey, I know you're ready to finish this track, so why don't I master it? And then I did the upsell, right? I can do a package of 4 tracks or an 8-track, or do your full album. And the way it was, then the client starts to give you reviews, and then they start telling your friends, and then the word of mouth kind of happens. And you know, I accelerated this process through Facebook ads. I actually ran a Facebook ad to get people into my email. And then I never talked to the guy. I just set up an automated email sequence through MailChimp, and I ended up mastering his whole album. This is this hip hop artist in you know, Arkansas that you know, never met him, never talked to him, but he sent me money, you know, to master his album. So, you know, the system really works if you really kind of map this out for yourself. And the reason why it works is there's this concept in marketing called the sales funnel. So I kind of, you know, after you have your customer journey, which I just mapped out, this is really how you get, you know, get people down the sales funnel, so to speak. And why it's a funnel is because, you know, not everybody is going to buy from you, and that's okay. So you just want to kind of, you know, you're weeding out the people that are going to actually buy from you at that point. So this is kind of like the more technical end of it. You know, just wanted to kind of show you, like, you have a traffic source, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, email, YouTube, you know, your live stream events or whatever. And then you're leading people to that free download, right? And then you have a thank you page, and then redirects to your music shop. And then you have, meanwhile, you have their email now. So you're just setting up nurture email sequences in between, getting them to engage with you with more free content. So you're always directing them back to your music shop. So once they actually buy something from you, then that's where what I like to call the profit maximizer is you. And why I have Facebook icons here is, like, you can do retarget, and I I had this at a session at the Musicians for Musicians we did on Facebook about the Facebook pixels and setting all that up. And so you can do retargeting ads, so that people are, you see that too. If you ever noticed on Facebook, you like maybe saw something on Amazon and then you see it on Facebook or something like that. But you can do the same thing with your music. There's no reason why you can't. So this is getting them to, buy more stuff from you again on your customer journey. And like I said, accelerating that through Facebook advertising. So yeah, I know it's a lot and it's kind of like more of a bird's eye view, and we could go into more details, but I think we're running short on time, but yeah, just wanted to plant the seed there and kind of think about it, as a business, in that you are, we're in the, it's 2020 and the old way of marketing your music isn't going to cut it. So, and what's funny is that this is kind of based off of a marketing, that concept of the sales funnel came from Ilias St. Elmo Lewis, which is a advertising pioneer from the early 20th century. And he came up with the sales funnel concept, which he calls the IDA method. If you do AIDI, and that's aware, interest, desire, action. So the point of that is like with marketing and sales is that you're taking somebody from awareness to a desired action. So you're leading somebody along on this path deliberately to buy something, for sales. So that's, yeah. And then in the digital age, this is like the digital equivalent of it. So yeah, hope that made sense.
Let me mention a couple of other things. I'm sorry, Roger. Go ahead.
Real quick, I just want to say, I think it's worth noting in passing that so many of the functions you're describing historically would be done by people with suits and ties and
Yep.
drug habits in a record company somewhere. And
Yep.
you're having to sort of adopt some of the mentality that they would have had doing that for you while you're a silly artist.
Well, what's interesting though about that, Roger, is that even today with the major labels, I think that what I see a lot of artists I work with is they're adopting this mindset that record labels have, the majors, Sony, Warner, Universal, have an obscene amount of money to spend on mass advertising, which is you spend enough money to get, ram this artist down everybody's throat, then a handful of people will catch on. But as artists, independent artists, we don't have that facility. So I don't think the big labels were actually thinking of this strategy. The successful indie labels, absolutely, yeah, but not the majors at all.
And the problem with that model is, if you really look at where the money's being made by the so-called successful indie labels, the bulk of the money is being made by their distributors. And their distributors are often those three big labels that you just mentioned: Sony, ATV Music, EMI, Universal, or Warner Brothers, which Warner Brothers is kind of like in a really weird place, since half of it's pretty much owned by Sony and the other half's pretty much owned by EMI. The point is that they're the main investors in most of the top streaming services like Spotify, which is why their artists get treated differently than if there was an Adam channel on Spotify and I subscribed and listened to nothing but you for a month, $9 of the $10 I paid wouldn't go to you, would go to somebody else. So there's so much of that stuff. What I find, I understand what you're saying, and it's clear that if you want to deal with the system as it is, as opposed to trying to fix this fucked up system, that's basically what you have to do. But the problem I have is that whenever free enters into it, you run into like major problems that people assume that it should all be free. I understand if you can get them into the pipeline and become like a fan, that you may be able to counteract it. But the example that you used of McDonald's asking if you want French fries with that, they're not giving you those French fries for free, and they didn't give you the Big Mac for free. And I think that there's a whole
But-
generation that has bought into this idea of free.
They got no.
and
They
that undermines the viability of the product. It
they
makes
got.
it seem
But
it's less valuable.
but the point is with the McDonald's analogy, I probably left out. I should have said they got me in the door because they were offering a free milkshake.
Really? I never got me in the door at McDonald's, and I'm older
Well,
than you. I'm the one that
I'm
started.
not. Well, McDonald's is, but that's if you aside from the actual brand, like just pretend you're like maybe it's your mom. Maybe a better analogy would be like a upstart restaurant, like in Hamilton Heights here that just opened.
Yeah,
How are
or
they
like
going to
a
get
drug,
people?
or like a drug dealer that gives away free heroin until you get them addicted.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
but the point is that
Yeah.
the downside of that model never gets factored in because everybody's got like tunnel vision about how do I become successful. And what I'm saying is that in the process, the whole system undermines the value of the content, which is really what this is all about. I mean, you've heard me say this before. If I want to be a professional musician, but I got to give my music away and then monetize it by selling T-shirts, I'm not a professional musician.
I'm not saying, but I'm not saying give every. You have to give something.
Why?
Does,
But okay, you have to. But this is the problem. That have to takes my ability to agree to it out of the equation because if all my competitors do it, I have no choice.
Yeah, but I don't know who. Like for instance, I don't know who. If I just saw you off the street or something, I'm not gonna, or I'm not gonna buy just off the top of. That's just not how people. You're working in the consumer world. You think that music has to have, has to have monetary value, and it does, and you can absolutely monetize it, but you have to get somebody in the door. Somebody's just not gonna just come in and throw money at you.
I agree,
It just doesn't
my
work that way.
question is whether or not what broke the system, more of what broke the system, is going to fix the system, or whether or not we need to look at what's wrong about what's not working in the system and try to fix that. Because to me, the giant elephant in the room is that most people don't value music now the way they did 20 years ago.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
absolutely. agree.
I would also argue though that you could either work in the broken system or create your own. This is the method of creating your own. I mean, you look at the
But
successful.
if you're creating your own system by using the very techniques that fuck the system up, I'm just asking this as a rhetorical question. I know it sounds like I'm advocating against what you're saying, but I'm trying to get some clarification here because it's like if people are breaking into your store and stealing stuff, I don't see how the solution is to open the doors and let them come in without having to break in. If the idea is that you need to get a return on your investment, and what I see from the entire generation is that the idea is give it away and then monetize it with something else.
Well, but that's the thing. Like, if I'm a restaurant, how am I going to get people in my fucking restaurant?
But generally what you do is you like make the best food imaginable, and then you get like the handful of gatekeeper critics to write like an unbelievable review if your business model is not McDonald's. See, part of the problem of what's wrong with the music business is that forever it's been predicated on the idea of a hit. If you talk to any of the old school cats that own record labels, they'll tell you 1 out of every 100 records they made broke even. Out of that, if you had 100 that broke even, one of them was a hit, and that's what paid for everything else. So the point is you got two business models in capitalism. I sell large numbers at reduced prices like McDonald's, or I'm Danielle Ballou, and the dining experience in my restaurant is going to be so good that you'll pay $500 for it. And I don't need to have that many people if they're paying $500 to be profitable. And the problem is in the music business, nobody will pay a premium for even a product that they agree is superior. That's what I see as being the ultimate underlying elephant in the room that nobody wants to address, because it means you got to say that I'm going to not give my music away for free, even if that means my career dies, based on the principle that that's what screwed the music business up.
Well, you're living.
If I could just throw in like a faux moderator point. There's an actual question in the chat, which sounds like it's for Jeff, and I just want to make sure that Rushania doesn't get left at the altar with an unanswered question while we have a long dialogue about how to reform the system. So I can't. Rushania, are you on mic?
Yes, I'm here.
Are you trying to ask this question to Jeff? Jeff is the one who spoke about classical music.
I want to speak about electroacoustic music. This is a kind near of classical music and near of electronic music. So this is question about this kind of music.
And
So
it's
Adam or
both
Jeff, you can look at
Adam
the
and
chat.
Jeff.
Yeah. Wait, so I'm trying to read the question here. If an electroacoustic composer wants to write music on commission, is it enough to be known only in the professional environment, perform the music in classical concert halls, or is it necessarily to have a large number of different subscribers or personal PR, social media, CDs? Yeah, this is kind of a big question.
The electroacoustic world is very much a world unto itself. I work with
Yeah.
Hubert Howe and the New York City Electroacoustic Music Festival, and that's a huge deal. I mean, it didn't happen this year, but in the past few years, it's been enormous. And he's had 250, 300, 325 or so composers coming in from around the world for this thing. And but how you make money in that world, I think a lot of people are academics. I don't know if it's something that has enough of a fan base that you can turn it into.
Yeah, I think, that's why
money.
a lot of ensembles, especially in the electroacoustic world, are composer-led, and they're actually performing as well.
One thing about the classical music world that makes it a little bit different.
I'll just mention that the New York Composer Circle is presided over by Hubert Howe, and in some of their concerts, they've had electroacoustic music events. So you might want to go to the New York Composer Circle website and just look around and see if that might be a group you'd want to get involved with, because if nothing else, you could probably get a thing or two on a concert or two once concerts happen again.
And also take a look at the New York City Electroacoustic. Again, another.
Yeah, and the other thing I will say too is, like, Jeff and I first met through Chamber Music America. That's the other thing. They have a commissioning program. So you find an ensemble that you want to partner with, and then they apply for grants to commission you.
And many of those ensembles are college-based.
Mm-hmm.
And so that that gives them a solid amount of support. That's another whole area that really we could spend a lot of time going into, is how do you raise money other than selling CDs or commissions and that kind of thing. And in many cases, especially these days, you go to an organization like Chamber Music America, which has expanded its definition of chamber music well beyond string quartets and piano trios. They're now giving funding for jazz projects of all kinds, and they have people like Rufus Reed and some very, very prominent jazz people that are on their board of directors and are now a big part of what they're doing. So, and then there's things like the humanities organizations. Every state in this country has a humanities organization. New York State has New York State Council on the Arts, which is funded by the state of New York. But the humanities organizations are funded by private contributions, and they support many, many music projects. One of the composers that I work with wanted to write a piece to celebrate 100 years of women's suffrage. So we went to Humanities New York and got a very nice grant from them for her to write a piece for one of the ensembles that I work with. And that paid for her commissioning costs, as well as for to a certain extent performance fees for the composers. Of course, the timing was perfect because we got the grant like 2 weeks after the COVID thing broke out. But there's many other ways to find money and support for what you're doing beyond just sales of, well, traditional ways of finding money. There's also, if you've never looked at it, the Foundation Center down on Wall Street is it's one of the greatest resources there is. I think there's probably well over 100,000 foundations in the United States, and they support everything from there are all kinds of music and culture programs to the friend of mine has a favorite joke. He says, somewhere out there has got to be, and this is Tweety Throttlebottom Asthmatic Cat Foundation, you know, because there's people who are very, very specific in the things that they fund. So you can get support for projects that you're working on. A lot of it is project based, and a fair amount of it is also based on what kind of audience you're going after and where you're presenting these things.
Some of the foundations, like the New York Foundation for the Arts, for example, only accepts music submissions every 3 years.
Right.
So you have to make sure that you line up in the schedule of when they're doing it. Like one year they'll do like films and poetry. The next year they'll do sculpture and ballet or something. The thing that's nice about Chamber Music America is their grants recur every year. You can apply easily for almost every one of theirs. As someone who's done it many years in the jazz thing.
And of course, New York City Department of Cultural Affairs. And you don't, it's good if you have a 501c3 not-for-profit status or are part of a 501c3. But there's organizations out there that you can join for something like $150 a year, which will support you as a 501c3 and allow you to operate that way so you can collect money and not louse up your tax situation. So, and again, I can, if somebody will remind me to please send that information. I have several of those places that I can send information about.
I'd like to just say one thing. I hear what you're talking about in the classical world and how people find other ways to maximize their earnings.
They have to. Ticket sales doesn't cover.
Right, but one of the problems in the jazz world and in the pop music world and R&B and all these other worlds is that fledgling industries from 20 years ago are now trillion-dollar industries. And if you look at the recording Academy's records, we went from being worth $19 million a year, $19 billion a year, down to being $11 billion a year after 3 years of increase. And that's not even factoring in the difference between 1998 and 2020 dollars. The problem with a lot of this stuff, and it's why I like get angry with the idea of giving things away, because there are entire industries out there that have built their trillion-dollar industries on the backs of free content that people gave away in the hopes that it would somehow draw attention to what they're doing. And it's like anything else. If you're in a union and you want more money from your boss, if you're the only guy that goes on strike, you just lost your job. But if they all go on strike with you, now the boss has to figure out how to deal with you. And there's no solidarity among the individual musicians because they're so busy trying to find that one little path for themselves. I don't know whether or not it's going to get fixed in our lifetimes or if it'll ever get fixed. But I do know that at the heart of all of this is two things. The quality of what people seem to accept as music is getting more and less involved around human beings in terms of pop music, especially. Yeah. And as that goes down and the ability of artificial intelligence rises, there's going to be a sweet point where people will accept music that's not created by human beings and it's free. And if they have had decades of listening to free music, why would they then pay for music created by human beings? That's really what's at the heart of what I'm trying to get us all to consider, because strategies to take advantage of, forgive the comparison. It's god awful, and I am apologizing up front. But it's like the guys in the concentration camps that figured out how to deal with the Nazis and work out some kind of like way of accommodating them, so they themselves didn't get killed while other people did. I just think there's something morally questionable about the idea that you give your stuff away, and because that sets the standard, it's like people that don't want to wear a face mask. It's like the idea of individual responsibility and individual freedom are completely out of balance in the world, and our business is reflecting that.
Yeah, but I want to just sort of throw in that we've, since the Digital Millennium Copyright Act and a few other things, we've seen like mega sea change. And I just saw a post the other day about how the founder of Spotify is worth more than Paul McCartney. He's 30 and he's never done any music in his life.
You don't want to know what they're paying for.
Things are in a bad place. So one thing I would just note in passing is that, a lot of what you're saying, Ken, is very much along the lines of Maria Schneider's initiative. And I would say maybe, you know, now that 802 is kind of on hold and whatever else is going on politically is going on, you and Maria might sort of want to pool resources and start a movement, because basically that's really the only option. You know, Adam is next generation, and he's living where he's living, and he's finding a way to pay his rent.
Well, that's my point. It's like
He's not talking about you. He's talking about Adam that runs the union.
Well,
No.
but,
I'm talking about him. I'm talking about Adam Reifsteck on the.
Sorry,
Well,
I thought you were talking about the local 802 president.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm 36, and I started my career when iTunes came out. So, and as soon as I entered in, you all guys were before iTunes, and when I came in, I was fucked. I'm sorry, my language, but I could not have a viable career doing in the old way of all you guys did. So what did I have to, I spent 15 years figuring out, oh, well, I have to do what, you know, small businesses do. And this is this marketing thing that I just shared with you guys. And I totally with you, Ken. I think the industry's broken and we need to fix it. But people like me need to find a way to survive in the meantime.
And I want to vouch for Adam.
Can I say
Adam's
something?
a classical music composer. He writes stuff that you would appreciate.
Sure.
That's how I originally know him, and he definitely is not a bubble-headed kid from the new millennium. He can do a nice Bartok impression when the chips are down. He's not paying his rent. So
Can I round up this conversation?
Yeah.
The reason why I'm interested in this webinar is because I'm producing now a new CD, and I'm working with CD Baby with the artwork. Adam did the mastering, and Dawood is going to write the liner notes for the press release and this and that. So my concern is more about now than super tomorrow. So my intention of my CD is that I'm not going to sell it for $9.99 or $5.50 or $1.30. I decided to go for the price of $50. So I want to sell 50, yes. It might sound very naive, but this is how I feel about my music. It should be, if somebody listens or buys my music, at least $50 it's worth. I sound very naive, and I have no idea how to sell it.
Sell it as vinyl. If you're going to charge $50, sell it as vinyl, because they'll pay $50.
Yeah.
Okay, but I decided for the CD first of all, because it's an experiment for me, and if I succeed, I can talk to the MFM membership, to the Manhattan Producers Alliance members, and also to Adams, that it's possible that there's a way that you make your demand from your side, how much you want to sell. And I take the risk. I'm not going to give any free t-shirts or so. I'm not going to do GoFunding or Kickstarter campaign, because I don't need contributions or donations. I'm so naive and stupid to believe that the cover and the music makes people to buy. If they don't buy, no problem. But I'm so sure that the music is so eclectic and so wide in its sounds that I could reach out to many people. So I was very interested to get some ideas how to marketing strategies, and with Jeff, with PR strategies. So this is why I'm here, and please stay in touch with me and find out how it went. And I decided to make it to a limited edition of 300 or 600 CDs. Everybody who buys get a signed CD with a little quote from me, and all the information will be online on my website. And I try even to control Amazon and all these platforms who sell really music for cheap. Either they don't get it, or I make a price that they have to go down, that my music has still some value.
So Rob, listen, I love you, but you really should do it in vinyl, because you can't, once somebody's got it in a digital format, which is what a CD is, you lose the control over that limited pressing. Anybody that wants to copy it can copy it, and you can't stop them. They cannot do that with vinyl. And vinyl fans are notorious for being willing to pay more. they'll pay more money. If you really want to control it the way you're describing, you really should consider vinyl, at least as part of it. I would consider it only in vinyl because that's the only way you're going to be able to control that.
Makes sense, but I don't have a warehouse in my apartment so small that I can't have 300 LPs.
300 LPs on the floor that will barely come up to your waist.
I know, but still, I can't.
And I think there's a pressing company in Brooklyn, maybe, that does it on demand. I have to
Disc makers. Disc makers in Philadelphia.
They do it too, but
they're just outside of Philadelphia. I work with them all
CD
the time.
Baby, the same company.
There's another
CD Baby has a vinyl. CD Baby has a vinyl offer. CD Baby can
yes, they do. Yes. But let's see. I work on it. If it's not working out, then I do it vinyl next time, and it's resolved. But
you got to understand. Steve, once you make it digital, you lost control. That's why the business went the way it went from the beginning of digital. Look, if you had an analog recording and you made a copy of it, anybody with good ears could hear that the copy was degraded from the original. By the time you made a copy of a copy of a copy, nobody could even listen to it. The thing about digital is I can make 10,000 copies of your record and give them away, and the 10,000th copy will sound as good as the original. That's where you lose control.
Yeah.
I'm not advocating don't do vinyl, but I'm saying if you're going to charge $50 and try to have a limited pressing to 300, the value-added things you're doing, like a signature and a special note, those things are incredibly valuable. But are they worth $50?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me give you one more. I believe in myself, and I believe in MFM, and I believe in you guys and all the people who give their quotes. So I will work it out. If it's not working out, doesn't matter.
E.T. Barnum once said, never underestimate the intelligence of the American public, and that was about 120 years ago. And look who got elected president last time. So you really want to, I don't care how much faith you got in you and us and MFM, you got that same amount of faith in the public?
Yes.
God bless you. 'Cause I should.
Jeff wanted to interject something.
There's just a couple of more bits of sort of practical information. Adam, could you put up the screen for that, for the one sheet?
Which one was that?
That was the one for Hyperchromatica.
Oh, the Kyle Gaughan's album? Yeah.
When you send out your CDs, LPs, whatever you're sending out, it's always good to include a one sheet.
Where is it?
And I had sent, let's see, up here, yeah, there we go. This is a good one-pager. It's got information about the recording, about the artist, a list of tracks with suggested tracks for airplay, and some contact information. It's just a good thing to send with whatever you're sending out. As Ken, you were saying, you know, when you send things out, they want physical copies. Include this with the physical copies.
I've always used one sheets when I'm sending things out to radio stations or sometimes to people that are going to review things. Are you suggesting we send them out to like the general audience too?
No. I'm saying when you send the discs out for review and or airplay.
Right. Okay.
This is a good format. And you'll notice there's a link there to Kyle Gaughan's website. Something you need on your website, which I find a lot of people don't have, is a good quality press kit.
Yeah.
Now, the things to have in that press kit are biographical information, but have it in 3 different formats. Have maybe a one-page, a full-page bio, a half-page bio, and a third of a page bio, so that they can use them for different things. It's also good for concert or live appearances. If people are looking to use things in press releases or whatever, they'll have that information there. Then if you want to have a page of press quotes, that's fine. And also include at least 2 or 3 good quality 300 dpi photos that are downloadable by the press. And then one thing I found to be very helpful, include a page of 10 press questions that interviewers can ask you, because I don't know how many times I've seen interviewers get really stuck on what to talk to people about. Years ago, I was working with a group here on the island that was doing a performance with Martin Luther King III. And he was going to be narrating. He was a terrible narrator, by the way, because he's got a very high-pitched voice and no musical sense whatever. But anyway, I worked for 2 weeks to get him an interview on a drive time with CBS News Radio. And I didn't do my homework because the very first question the interviewer asked was, so you're going to be appearing with the Long Island Philharmonic this Saturday night doing a cantata. What the heck's a cantata?
Right.
The interview was down the drain because King didn't have any idea, and I hadn't fed the CBS people good questions to ask. So have 10 good questions that people can ask you that will help with an interview.
Did you create this graphic layout yourself, Jeff, on behalf of your client?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to mention something. I've got 10 releases as a leader and working on some more and 8 books. And I cannot tell you how many times I have found very famous international critics in very, very big journals, you know, that we've all heard of, international ones in France and in London and New York, US, all over, that literally 75% of the review that they write were quotes they just took right out of the press release or the one sheet. I mean, literally, they didn't even change the punctuation because they get paid like $300 a pop when they write these little articles or reviews. So, you know, the magazine the editorial department will send them out. And, you know, some magazines, if you run an ad, they won't run the review if it's a bad ad. If you bought ads, I mean, it's a bad review. They won't run the review if you bought an ad. If you don't, they will. Other ones, it's like, hey, take your chance. If you get a bad review, that's your problem. We have nothing to do with it. The editorial department's not going to put a finger on the scales. But I was just shocked at how many times people literally took things from liner notes, from the review, I mean, from the one sheet or from the press release, verbatim. And those were the central parts of the actual reviews, or in some cases, even articles they wrote.
That's true. That's true. Even writers are not really taking more time in listening into something. They just copy something and paste it in their liner notes, reviews. I haven't read a good review for a long time.
That's one thing about this Fanfare magazine that I've mentioned a couple of times. They have reviewers that really do take their time to write high quality reviews. In most cases, there's the occasional lazy one that will, as you say, just grib from here and there. But for the most part, they have very good quality, very thoughtful reviews. Actually, another place here in town that had great reviews for a long time was Theater Scene, which is it's a little independent theater publication. They had a woman working there who wrote some of the most amazingly detailed reviews. She did over 3 issues. She did a review of, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, of the New York City Electroacoustic Music Festival. So, again, a lot of it's just the luck of the draw. Oh, that killed conversation.
Well, it's well after 5, so I'm going to have to bid you all adieu.
Good.
Anything further, either Jeff or Adam? Are we?
Only one thing regarding myself. Why CD? One of my markets are outside of America, like Iran. Especially, I got a couple of 100 fans there through Facebook and Twitter, and they can't buy LP. So considering that market, I need a CD for that reason.
Do a combination. Do have vinyl and have CDs.
Pardon me?
Do have vinyl and have CDs.
Oh, okay, yes, of course. I will consider this as well as a result of this great webinar.
All right. Well, look, I want to just jump in here and say I'm deeply gratified that this has happened, and it is a collaboration of both Musicians for Musicians and the Manhattan Producers Alliance, which has been taking sort of a little bit of a nap, and so I'm really happy to have seen people from both organizations show up today at various times, and Adam and Jeff are both associated with both organizations in one form or another. So it's all gravy beyond the fact that this happened from my point of view. So thanks to everybody from my point of view.
Yeah, I'm glad we could do this.
Adam, could you respond to Peter's chat as a round and
where he mentioned there, when Ken mentioned the example of non-impact of individual going on strike, and then brought up the Spotifys that make their money off of our creation. I had a vision of Musicians for Musicians reaching 1 million members and having the power to strike for higher royalties for streaming.
okay.
Well, you and Saurabh are on the same page, exactly.
You too.
Oh, Peter, one thing to know is that there are some weird antiquated laws, one in particular called the Taft-Hartley Act, that has
yes.
a provision in it called the secondary boycott provision that prohibits you from engaging in economic actions against someone who's not your primary employer. That's what the whole 1099 economy is about, is to get people into the gig economy so they don't have the power to actually come together and strike. And if you do, what you risk is the federal government going after you under the RICO statutes and seizing all of your assets so you couldn't even hire a lawyer to defend yourself. That's, if you really want to get to what you're talking about with 1 million members that can go up against Spotify and companies like that, you got to get like the Congress and the Senate to amend or reform parts of the labor laws that go back to the 1940s, in particular the secondary boycott prohibition in the Taft-Hartley Act. That's why the unions can't do it.
That's true.
So
Therefore,
make sure it's a
numbers
million
are power.
Members if you want to do that, because otherwise you'll all wind up in jail.
No, see, that's what will happen to you. They'll seize your assets and throw your ass in jail. That's how unfair the system actually is.
Fascinating. Thank you.
But one kudo to Peter that he imagined that he believes that 1 million musicians come together. That's my dream. So if it's 1 million musicians go on strike and they want to go to prison for a couple of days, why not?
So Rob, are you going to bring that Kool-Aid with you when we go to prison?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, great. That's let's end on that note of optimism, because musicians successfully going on strike and getting out of prison in only 2 days.
Oh, I've got an even better optimistic sense to end on. The other day at the Jazz Committee meeting, somebody brought up the idea that if you think about it objectively, when you're playing in clubs, you're not what the club owner is selling. You're the attraction to get the people in to buy the watered down drinks and crappy food that they're selling at inflated prices. So what that means is we are basically one step removed from being the pole dancers in a strip club.
But let's just say that culture is a happy accident. For more.
But think about that one if you want to get really depressed real fast.
So I'll send. So we had some worksheets and stuff that we showed today. So I'll package them up, send it to Saurabh, and he has everybody's email. So we'll circulate that stuff.
Yeah, and if as I said, if anyone does want the press list that I have for the Tri-City,
Great, Jeff. Thanks.
share that as well.
Webmastering, Adam, you did a great job.
Yeah, thanks both of you guys, everybody.
No problem.
Okay, till next time.
Yeah,
Right.
we'll see you.
Take care.
Peter, good to see you.
Where do I go?
Thank you. Goodbye.